The Pat Mayo Experience.
Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience. Charles Schwab Challenge DraftKings picks, Millionaire Maker preview, maybe some showdown tips along the way as well. If you out there want to get into a draw for potentially a lot of Millionaire Maker tickets, you got to follow me on Twitter at the PME. That's where I'm going to be doing the draws. Also, smash the like button for the episode. Give me your favorite player in the $6,000 range. And don't be scared, people, to download the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast, leaving a 5-star review and something you enjoy about the show. Plus, if you want more in-depth knowledge, because when you see the graphics pop up on the screen, if you're watching the video, not the audio version of this and just listening, because then you would be seeing nothing. Whatever you see out of your eyes would be then. Either way, FantasyNational.com is powering all of the stats, and that's where I'll be generating all of my lineups this week. And here's the thing. FantasyNational.com is free until Thursday. So if there's ever a time to go check it out, use it to build as many lineups on DraftKings as you want, I would suggest go doing that right now. After it goes back behind a paywall, if you enjoy the site, get yourself a discount by using FantasyNational.com/Mayo, and boom, get yourself 20% off. It's that easy. Joining me to break this all down, sharing the same screen because we are having extreme technical difficulties. First, we have Ben Rasa from Awesemo.com. We also have Rick Gehman from RickRunGood.com and CBS Sports. Rick, you said the CBS Sports podcast is going to like every day now?
We're going daily. We're giving the people what they want. We've heard the calls. So yes, instead of 3 or 4 times a week, it's daily through what seems to be at least the Tour Championship. So a lot more stuff coming.
Ben, I saw a ton of stuff come out at Awesemo.com. What's the schedule now that golf is back?
Yeah, we are pumping it up since golf has taken center stage. I'll have shows Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, live before lock, and then obviously behind the paywall. All the tools, the Slack chat, everything up and running, ready to go for the season.
You can find my cheat sheet, which will come out on Tuesday afternoon, up on dkplaybook.com. I penned like 4,500 words on this tournament, so we don't need to relitigate everything that's going on in terms of rust. We're just going to talk about who you should probably play in the DraftKings Millionaire Maker, or just who are the best DraftKings picks for the week on this show. But I do suggest checking out Monday's show with myself and Jeff Feinberg. You can find that in the description of this show, as you can for my research show that I released on Saturday, my first look going through using Fantasy National, trying to find all the key stats. There's a bunch of people got added into the DraftKings system on Monday. Sergio Garcia being the number one of those. He's now $8,000 in the system. Brant Snedeker is out of this tournament, so don't use him unless you're playing me in a head-to-head. Let's go to the top of the board. Let's kick this off. We have Rory, Justin Thomas, John Rahm, and Bryson DeChambeau. They are the very top players, the top 4 in terms of pricing on DraftKings. Ben, can you construct a lineup that doesn't have any of these guys in it and still potentially win?
Oh, definitely. This is a major level field. That was the thing that stuck out the most when we got everything. This is, a couple guys, obviously Tiger, Decky, but other than that, this is loaded. So, of course, these 4, you can make an easy case for any of them or even 2 of them. But you can also make a case for just building very balanced and starting in the 9K.
Yeah, Rick, what would you think you would end up doing? Would you go with 2 of these guys in the $10,000 range? Or do you think you would be more likely to fade all 4 of them and just start with like Webb Simpson or Xander Schauffele?
I'm more likely to fade. Honestly, at this point, I have just convinced myself of the narrative that the leaderboard come Sunday is going to be completely upside down, and that you could, if there was ever a case to be made about fading any guys, especially the guys at the top, it would be this week. So with the plethora of good golfers that we're seeing in the 9s, the 8s, even the 7s, I will be much more likely to start my lineups down in Webb Simpson, Xander, Ricky Fowler territory.
You see, I was thinking the same thing because I don't love a lot of like the low 7s. Like, if I could find a way to make my cheapest player like $7,400, I would feel a lot better about that. But it's really hard to look at this field, and the field strength has been compared to like the BMW Championship or the FedEx Cup playoffs. And when you look at those FedEx Cup playoff events, it's usually legit players who end up winning them. So if you have the 4 most legit players, well, I mean, Bryson's not really in the tier of Rory, Rahm, or Justin Thomas, but let's say those 3 players, like, I think a lot of people will just say, I need to have at least one of those guys, then figure out the rest of my roster. If that's the case, Rick, who is it of those top 3 guys?
Yeah, I mean, I love Rory McIlroy in every possible scenario, but I don't think that he's like 1.5 times as likely to win this golf tournament as John Rahm, or twice as likely to win over, Justin Thomas, which the Vegas odds somewhat indicate. So I like Rahm. I think, Rory has really overshadowed how good John Rahm has been. There's an argument to be made that since the US Open, John Rahm is one of the hottest players on the planet. He's the only guy of these three that has course history at Colonial, with a second place finish in 17, a fifth in 2018. He missed the cut last year, but this to me feels like an opportunity to get a guy who has just as much upside for a little bit cheaper.
For me, Ben, I think I'm going to Justin Thomas in this spot if I'm going to pay up a little bit more. I just think that trying to construct a roster with Rory on it, well, if Rory wins, you're going to obviously need him in your lineup. So now you're just praying Rory doesn't win and Justin Thomas finishes better in that spot. But I just think overall, where you get that price discount, the rest of your team is just going to be better with Justin Thomas as your most expensive guy.
No doubt. You're getting, anytime you can get a discount and an ownership discount, and you have world-class players, it's pretty appealing. So you're going to save $1,200. You're going to save ownership. Both of those things you can spend elsewhere. You could take a chalkier player down low, and you don't have to dip as far down. So I'm on board with Rahm or JT. Rory, of course, I'm going to have exposure, but if he's clearly the highest owned of the three, and I think he will be, it's going to be tough to get a lot of leverage.
If people out there want to get a better sense of ownership, there is an ownership projections tab on fantasynational.com. I would suggest using that as late on Wednesday as possible. That's when the ownership percentages have matured a little bit more. But I'm doing a live chat Wednesday, noon 30, so 12:30 p.m. Eastern time on the DraftKings YouTube channel. It'll be up on the audio feeds after the fact if you just want to listen to it back. I'll have my final card for the picks, my first round leaders, a weather report. It's going to be really hot and not windy. At least that's how it looks right now. We'll check in on Wednesday and see how that goes. But I'll be going over a lot of the ownership then. But what I'm seeing right now, Ben, is that all three of those guys are basically going to be about even, and no one's really using Bryson.
Yeah, well, Bryson, if we can rope him in, he would be my favorite of the four. He is another player who's playing really well. He's dismantling. I know off the tee here isn't overly important, but that guy right now is dialed in with the driver, and his course history is terrible, which I think is going to depress the ownership. I don't worry about that at all. I think Bryson's just a different player right now. I throw his results out completely.
Yeah, what do you make of Bryson, Rick? I bet Bryson after his odds fell. He opened at 22, then he dropped down to 25. I was like, yeah, I'm in. And he was the one guy I was kind of targeting this entire time over the layoff, being like, he was playing so well. I know he's going to keep up whatever the hell he was doing. He's going to be practicing. He's going to be on Twitch half the time too. But this is one of these mechanical courses where it's going to take a lot of strategy off the tee. A lot like we're going to see next week at RBC Heritage, that I think this is a proper type of course for him. I wouldn't have any problems going with him, but you always talk about squeeze pricing, and he's the guy who's getting squeezed here because everyone wants one of the top three guys, and everyone wants Webb Simpson. So it's leaving Bryson in this like weird dead zone.
Yeah, love it. We've been banging the drum for Bryson for a couple of months now, and this is not an easy course by any stretch of the imagination. It's the seventh most difficult course on tour last year. It was the third most difficult par 70. What Bryson has done, and I call him a dork all the time, and he is, but like it's working. His off the tee game from January 1st to now, it's a very small sample, but if he keeps that going, it'll be the second best off the tee season ever recorded since they started keeping track of it. Like that's how good he's gotten off the tee. So yeah, sign me up for as much Bryson. Like I think he's just gonna not skip a beat, hit the ground running as soon as we get back to golf.
Yeah, that's sort of the lean that I have to. So maybe I fade the top three and just end up going to Bryson. But Ben, you have had the most success being a DraftKings player between the three of us. So in an opportunity like this, where let's say you're playing in the Millionaire Maker and there's 170,000 entries in it. So those are the teams that you're competing against. How does that change the way that you're going to construct lineups this time around? Because it's not a major. So we're dealing with It's a lot like the players in the way that this was constructed, although we didn't get all the way through the players. But how can I word this properly? Do you have to take your shots? Because there's like a few guys in the $8,000 area, like 4 of them that no one's going to own, that I think that you probably just have to roster out of ownership alone if you actually want to have a chance to win. I was reading your article up on Osmo, and you kind of spoke about this more eloquently than I just did.
So there's definitely something to that. Just think about it like this. When you have 170,000 people, if you have a player that is 5% owned, that means 8,500 people still have them. This is not like when you're in a 100-man and someone's 5% owned, you have 5 people, and now you can pretty much build whatever you want around them. You're going to be unique. You have to kind of combine ownership and try to project, okay, if I start with Bryson and then I loop in, I'm just going to throw out Patrick Reed. Now what am I looking at? Do I still need more leverage with my other 4, or do I have a path to victory if they come, say, 1-2? You just have to have that mindset, because it really is a hybrid winner take all. You have a third of the prize pool in first place. Yes, would coming in second be nice? Of course, but it's a $900,000 difference. So you really have to build with the mentality that you're trying to win the entire tournament.
And one of the things that I wrote about in my column this week, as it pertains to the Millionaire Maker, is that if you play, let's say you play all the chalk players, and by chalk, I mean just the most popular players. It looks like Webb Simpson's going to be the highest owned player. And I love Webb Simpson this week. It doesn't mean I'm not going to use him, but if you do use him and you pair him with, let's see here, Sung Jae and Matt Kuchar and Daniel Berger and Harris English, and you have that lineup, your path to winning is basically nil, because if the chalk does hit, now you're competing with like 20% of the field essentially and have the most minute chance of doing it. Now you might not like playing some of these contrarian plays that are 2-3% ownership because you have the other guys rated higher, but your path to victory is actually better if those guys come through. Like if they're the ones in contention, you actually have a shot at winning. Just because Webb Simpson's in first place, you might not even cash if that's the case.
It's a super fine line. And Rick, I know you've spoke about this in the past. Like, you know how you can get leverage? You could play Keith Clearwater, and that would be a disaster. You don't want to do that. But if you have golfers that are, say, in your mind, 60-40 as an underdog, well, if you're getting 150 ownership, that's a great play long term. They're almost a coin flip, and you're getting 1/5 of the ownership. So it's a really fine line. Don't just play 6 1% owned guys. They're 1% for a reason, but don't be afraid to pivot off a chalk play here and there, and in the millie, maybe a couple of them to really make sure you're unique.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that, like, when you're trying to go contrarian in these spots, I would say make the line of demarcation $7,500. Like if you pivot off of a $8,300 player to an $8,200 player, chances are that those guys are probably pretty close in skill set. Like once you start getting into like, oh well, there's a highly owned guy at $7,200. Maybe you don't play him, but I think if you're going to try to go with like the really low owned guy and you don't have a whole lot of faith in it, at least the higher price players are usually a lot better, Rick.
Yeah, for sure. I think you nailed the big point. I don't think people realize the razor thin margins that some of these guys are. I mean, I'm looking at $8,900 Mark Leishman, 88 Gary Woodland, 87 Tony Finau. They are like most of the time very similar players. They're going to pop off. They're going to maybe be top 5 in some situations. They're going to miss the cut, but they could come in at completely different ownership levels. So people really get it's almost like emotionally attached to certain guys that they want to be playing, and they conceive that they are a much better play than the guys that are either $100 more or $100 less. And that's simply not the case. It may pan out that way on Sunday, but like over time, these guys are super, super close.
And this is what we're talking about in terms of the Millionaire Maker this week, or even like the giant $5 where there's 45,000 entries. But Ben, I won a ticket in last week's UFC 250 card. I won a ticket into the $555 tournament this week. So I'm playing in that against 2,000 other people. If you're playing in a 2,000 and less, or even like the $100 single entry, which I think has like 800 people in it, how does the mindset change a little bit then? Like, should I be playing essentially a cash game lineup, like a safe lineup, or should I not be afraid of chalk but have like 1 or 2 pivot plays along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I think people, especially in single entry, I think people are way too conservative. They just throw their cash lineup in, and to me, that's a big mistake. In something that's 2,000 people, that's a nice size number where you can start to isolate pretty quickly. A 10% guy, that's only a couple hundred people. You start pairing them or leaving a little money on the table, you're not going to have to worry about dupes. So what I tell people a lot, if you have 1 bullet in it and you want to be somewhat conservative, build your cash lineup and then take 2 players and 2v2 it, something like that. Or you want to be more aggressive, do a 3v3. You can start with that framework, but I don't think the best move is to leave a cash lineup just because it's very obvious and it's going to be duped regardless.
$9,000 range. This is where a lot of the names that people want to jam in are going to be sitting. So it's going to be likely one of the top three, and then immediately into this range, and then way down into the $7,000 or low $8,000 area. Webb Simpson is the top price player in the $9,000 area. I also expect him to be the highest owned player potentially in this entire contest, 9,800. Brooks is 97, Xander 96, DJ 95, Ricky Fowler 94, Sung Jae 93, Patrick Reed 92, Morikawa 91, and Justin Rose comes in at $9,000. This range is tricky for me because all I really want to do, Rick, is play Webb and play Sung Jae and Xander and be on my way.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, there's a reason. Like, I agree. I think Webb's going to be super popular. I think Sung Jae is going to be super popular for a reason, right? Like, Webb's awesome. He's already a winner this year. And I like the fact that he's kind of like, I don't want to call him a short game specialist. He's just not very good with his driver, but his short game's unbelievable. And there's a big difference between ripping drivers off a mat into your net in your driveway in front of your launch monitor than there is like getting in tournament conditions on the side of a green where, you know, the grain's running into. That's a much trickier shot. So that's where I think a lot of this rust shows up. And if I get guys that are really good at the short game like Webb Simpson is, that's really appealing. Sung Jae is unbelievable. The fact that he goes out and wins Honda at 21 years old and backs it up in the next week with a third place at Arnold Palmer instead of just like getting drunk and going crazy and missing the cut, like it's insane. But I do think there is leverage to be held on, you know, even DJ, Brooks Koepka, guys that we think a break might have benefited. Like, that's appealing. You can kind of go anywhere you want here and just play the game theory situation.
Well, Ben, that's why I wanted to have that conversation before we got into this area and the 8,000s, because I think that this is what we're going to see. Like, I don't want to play Brooks. I don't want to play Ricky. I don't want to play DJ, but neither does anyone else. Like, I know these guys are going to be significantly lesser owned, and at their peak, like, Dustin's a better player than Sung Jae. He's a better player than Patrick Reed. But right now, in my mind, he's not, but I don't know that for sure, right?
Yeah, again, I hate to say the same thing, but it is a fine line there. You know, if you are convinced Webb is my number one play on the board, well, don't fade him then. Work around that. Figure something out with your other 5 spots. Now, it's easier for me. I don't like Webb at all in this spot. So naturally, of course, I'm going to fade him when he's really popular. I'm going to go right to Ricky. I'm going to go to Patrick Reed. Brooks and DJ to me are more high upside Millie type plays, but it's hard to know where those floors are for them. But Ricky and Reed on Bentgrass, I feel very comfortable mixing them in. You could even start with a guy like Ricky and be very different, or they could be your second man in after a Rahm or JT type.
What do you make of Morikawa? Like, he never misses the cut. He hits every fairway, and he hits every green in regulation. Now, if he misses a green in regulation, his short game, not great.
No, he is really tricky because if he has not putted at all and he still had pretty solid results, assuming it flips even randomly at some point, he should have some room for upside. I'm going to probably pivot to Justin Rose. That's just naturally what I do. I go usually macro over micro, and Rose is someone that I know he has struggled so far, but maybe the break got some things fixed. At $9K, it's pretty appealing for me.
Yeah, Rick, I think it's kind of misleading. So Justin Rose switches back to TaylorMade, or at least that's the rumor. But when he missed the cut at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, he was actually striking it fine off the tee. He was killing it on approach, but lost 5.5 strokes putting in 2 rounds. Like, but people are looking at it like, oh, he was a disaster. He actually wasn't from a ball striking department, but he's had a lot of these flashes recently where he's lost a bunch of strokes putting.
Yeah, and that was the one thing that he figured out to get him to the world number one. If you flash back 3 or 4 years, he was a great ball striker. He couldn't putt. When he learned to putt, he became the number 1 player in the world and immediately then signed with Hanma and switched the whole thing up. It was crazy. Now, I think I'm looking at it right now. 9 of his last 11 measured events, he lost strokes off the tee as well. That's very non-Justin Rose. And yeah, it's the losing 5.6 putting at the Tour Championship, losing 5 putting at the BMW, another 5.5 at Arnold Palmer. That's scary, scary stuff. I believe, and I think Ben agrees with this based on what he said, this 3-month break to get right, switch back to your TaylorMades, get all dialed in is like, that's best case scenario for this guy.
So I played this kind of interestingly. On the betting show, I had made mention that I saw him floating at 45-1, and I bet him to win this tournament. I think that he can win this tournament. I just don't know if the ownership isn't going to be so depressed on Justin Rose that it's like, oh, well, no one's using Justin Rose. I'll use Justin Rose and be wildly unique. Like, I think that he's going to come in double-digit ownership, and at that point, it's like, well, I have this bet on him to win. I think I can go to safer, at least to a player that I think that is either lower owned, has more upside, or at least just has a decent floor, Ben. Like, I just don't know what to do with Justin Rose. I don't know if I want him in my DraftKings lineup. Same as DJ. Like, they're in the same bucket for me.
Yeah, and you really don't have to evaluate every play purely on, like, some guys, it's just truly, what do you think of them? You don't have to worry about ownership. It's going to be somewhat middling, and let the other plays dictate that. So Rose, for me, I don't really have a strong take. It's more Morikawa, I think, will be squeezed. I like Reed. I like Rose. And then, there's plenty of guys in that high 8s that Rick alluded to earlier with Leishman, Woodland, Finau. They're all going to garner interest too. So not everyone can be mega popular. Something has to give.
Well, I think that's what we're going to discover in the $8,000 range. And for the record, I'm playing Webb and Sung Jae. I'm just going to see how I can differentiate the rest of my lineup. And it's in this range. So you go Leishman, Woodland, Finau, Lowry, Kuchar, Scheffler, Jason Day into Matthew Fitzpatrick, Louis Oosthuizen, Spieth, and Garcia. That's your entire $8,000 range. And there's weirdly some sort of like, oh, this is the Jordan Spieth renaissance. Like, I've heard his name be brought up way more often than I really would have thought coming into the week. But there are like 4 guys in this range that no one wants a piece of. It's Shane Lowry, Jason Day, Matthew Fitzpatrick, Louis, and even Sergio, because he was a late add to the field. His ownership is going to be like 3%. So I think that if you do want to make a stand, either taking 1 or 2 of these guys in your lineup, or even mixing in 3 of them, if you can pick the right ones and they actually do what they're supposed to. Like, Shane Lowry's a top 20 player in the world. Louis is inside the top 25. Like, these are good players. They're just wildly inconsistent, and no one wants to play them this week in particular. So I think that if you can figure out which one of these guys is going to be the one, I think these guys are the key to actually winning this thing, or at least giving yourself the best chance, Ben. I think for me, it's Lowry and it's Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, for me, it's Jason Day and Fitzpatrick. Day is someone, we'll see where the health is, but just to see him at 8,300, I still believe in the upside there. I think that he's going to string together some good golf, and this is going to be the lowest we see him. So I'm going to go there, and I do think, and say what you want, I have no, obviously, data behind this. I think people, though, are even more scared of guys like Day and Usti because we have, like, is anybody going to withdraw, especially this week? And that's the first guys you think of. Like, I'd be lying if I said, man, rostering Day, like, it just feels like if someone was going to withdraw, it'd be him. But there's really no basis for that. So I'm pretty confident that I'm going to go to these guys. And like you said, you don't need 40% of Jason Day. You're going to get over with a low percentage and you'll be very comfortable.
What do you make of the bottom half of this $8,000 range, Rick? Like, are those the guys that you would identify as people aren't going that direction?
Yeah, I mean, outside of Jordan Spieth, I mean, like, I'm guilty of it too, right? I think that this is you call it a spot game in other sports. This is like the one shot to try to get Jordan Spieth right now. And if he goes back to being what we saw in I don't know, the last 18 months, we can forget about it for a while. But this is kind of that perfect storm situation. I do think that Sergio is he's just not a popular player in general. Plus, you throw in the late ad. I know it's still early in the week. I know there's a lot of people who haven't made lineups yet, but any of those first looks, because the pricing came out so early, would not have included Sergio. He's not going to gain a lot of steam throughout the week, and nobody really likes him anyway. I think that's kind of a natural place to go. And then you nailed it, Pat. Shane Lowry at 86. That's a guy who gains in all 3 categories except putting, but he's like a barely negative putter on the season. Plenty of upside. That's kind of where I'm going here in the 8,000s.
So as it pertains to Shane Lowry, I actually threw in a bet on him to win at 70-1 because I'm horrible at betting this week, and I just got too excited and wanted to bet everyone. So don't worry about me in the betting side. But for this tournament, like, he's played really well at Heritage in the past, which is another one of these tree-lined, shorter courses. Obviously, he he won at Firestone, which is another pure accuracy course realistically. And for whatever reason, Lowry can just show up in these like really strong fields and pop. Like it's kind of stunning from time to time when you're like, oh man, Shane Lowry actually won this tournament, like this like high-end tournament. It's like the shitty tournaments he doesn't do well in. So I think that he is the guy who could be the key to unlocking all of this, for me at least. And like around the green, he's very good. Like he's an inconsistent player, but the one thing I did notice about him is we've just spent 3 months off. But looking at like his weird layoffs, like he took 6 weeks off from the end of the European Tour season to play the Hong Kong Open, came back, finished in second place. He took like another 8 weeks off at the end of last year, came back, came in third. Like the layoffs don't really seem to bother him at all. And I don't know if that's fool's gold or not. It's 2 events, but it is worth noting that it doesn't seem to bother him at all.
He's a gamer, dude. I mean, he obviously wins the Open Championship. He finishes T8 at the PGA. I mean, even a top 25, I think he had at the US Open, which is some place I didn't think was a great fit for him. And he's an absolute gamer. And yeah, it's weird. He'll show up at the top of the leaderboard. And I'm like, oh, holy crap, I forgot about Shane Lowry. And you look at his world golf ranking and he's legit. So yeah, I certainly think he's sneaky, and you're going to get him at, I don't even know, something very low in terms of ownership.
Yeah, I think just on the surface, Ben, like, I like him better than Kuchar objectively. I like him less than, well, Leishman I'm kind of spotty on just because he has no accuracy off the tee, and that's really going to hurt you here. But like Woodland and Finau are probably objectively better plays than Shane Lowry. At the same time, I don't think it's that big of a difference. It's not 6 times the ownership difference kind of thing. And I like Woodland a lot.
That's what I'm saying. That is what you really need to evaluate sometimes. Like if Finau's 25%, and Shane Lowry is 5%, you're saying, all right, does he beat him? Is he that much more likely to beat him 5x? I'd probably say no. You don't need to go there, of course, in every lineup, and there are other guys. I probably am going to prefer to take shots in the lower 8K range with the guys we mentioned, Day and Usti and Sergio, but no doubt you're going to get the ownership there with Shane Lowry. He's probably going to be the lowest owned of them all.
So between Rose, Leishman, Woodland, and Finau, that upper 8K and at 9,000, Ben, is it Rose for you? Because it's Woodland for me if I'm going to be using one of these guys.
It's Rose for me, yeah.
Rick?
Yeah, also Rose for me. I got him at 50-1 as well, so fingers crossed.
What do you make? I mean, Ben, I would ask you what you make of Louis, but I know that you're going to use him because you use him in every tournament. Rick, what do you make of Louis?
Oh, man, it's been really bad for Louis. I mean, he's got a much smaller sample size than a lot of these guys in terms of strokes gained, but he's been bad. The miscut at Honda, 51st at WGC Mexico. You can at least hang your hat a little bit on a 5th place finish here at Colonial 2 years ago. But I don't know. He's just weird. I can never find the I don't know what the right word is, like the cojones to like roster this guy. I don't know. It's just he never moves the needle enough for me.
I'm never a Matthew Fitzpatrick guy, but when I was looking into him, like I just think logically this course suits him a lot. He's an accurate player, good short game. He can get a really hot putter going. And I think that's more important to assess once we get down to like the very bottom of the 7Ks, upper 6s. Like, is there one particular skill that a guy can have to be like, oh, he's just lapping the field in this one thing? And I think there's a few putters down there that if they putt to their upside, it's like game over. They can do whatever and linger around with some of these actual like good ball strikers and players. But Fitzpatrick, Ben, when do you think the last time he missed a cut was?
Fitzy? I mean, I don't know, but he is a consistent type player, and I know he's come over here and played pretty well, has experience against fields like this. So what was it? I can't even conjure a guess.
He missed the cut at the Estrella Dam N.A. Encuta Masters hosted by the Sergio Garcia Foundation in Spain.
Well, if I was going to guess, obviously it would have been that, but what the hell is that? I've never even heard of that.
It's like a Sergio like goes over, like him and Rom go over and just like dummy the field against like a bunch of scrub. Somehow Fitzpatrick missed the cut. He's missed 2 cuts in the past 2 years. So between 2020 and 2019. And the other one was at Pebble Beach, not this year, the year before. So he like, if you need guys to get through, it does seem like he's going to be there. It just takes one hot round with the putter, which we know he can do. And if this course, Rick, plays as difficult as it has the past few years, then the Lowrys and the Fitzpatricks of the world, I think that actually benefits them.
Yeah, and look at these fields and tournaments he's contended in the last couple of years. Second place at last year's Arnold Palmer Invitational, fourth at the WGC FedEx St. Jude, ninth at this past year's Arnold Palmer Invitational. Those are deep, very strong fields, and the API gets played on a course that can beat you up. So that's what I like to see when you're talking about the strength of field and the strength of the course that we're going to see this week. He's another one of these gamers. He shows up and he can grit his teeth and he can be on the first page of the leaderboard come Sunday.
We kind of skimmed over Kuchar and Scotty Scheffler. I just don't have a ton of interest. Maybe I should. Like, I really wanted to bet Scheffler this week if he was going to be like 90-1, but he's 40-1. And I just bet I think that everyone's going to use Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah, I don't have, you can't have a strong take on everyone. If I landed there, I'd feel fine, but not really forcing it. Kuchar's always, I think he'll be pretty popular in cash, but in tournaments, there's so many pivots that are higher upside. I kind of lean rolling the dice more than going Kuchar.
Rick, do you think you're going to use any one of these two guys? And if so, who would it be?
It would probably be Kuchar. I'm a much bigger fan of Scotty Scheffler, but yeah, already we're seeing his ownership looking like it's going to be pretty large. The good thing that Scheffler has going for him is that he makes a ton of birdies. I think he's like fourth or fifth on tour in like birdie average, which goes a long way in DraftKings scoring. He makes a lot of bogeys too, don't get me wrong. Kuchar has decent course history here. He's probably going to come in at a lower ownership. I'm not dying to get either of them in my lineups, but if you made me choose, I'd unfortunately have to opt for Kuchar.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to go full fade on both of them and try to spread around the risk with the Fitzpatrick, Lowry, and maybe I'll try to pick between Sergio, Louis, and Day, whichever one I end up liking the best. Or maybe there's someone in these high seven area that we can go to. Like when you look at the high $7,000 Rick, does anyone just immediately stand out?
Yeah, I mean the logical guy is Daniel Berger, right? But he's going to be everyone's logical choice. He's coming in great form. He's trying to get back to that top 25-ish type player that we saw a couple of years ago. But Victor Hovland's sitting there at $7,900. He played a little bit over the break. He's only a handful of starts removed from beating I know it was an alternate field, but a PGA Tour field runner up to Scotty Scheffler at one of those like caddy charity events over the break. So he's someone who we've been touting how good the upside, how good the skill set is for this kid for the last couple of years. And now he can kind of show it to us a little bit.
Yeah, Rick, I look at Harris English, I look at Daniel Berger, and I just think the world is going to be on those two guys. And I don't think that they're more skilled than the guys around them. Like I get why they're popular. Like the recent form has been really good, but like, are you really telling me that Harris English is significantly better than Na or Kisner?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. That's the difference that we were talking about a little bit earlier is how much better are these guys that you're investing at a 3 times ownership or a potentially 4 times ownership? Like, I don't know what Kevin Na comes in at, but Kevin Na, everyone in the world talks about upside. Kevin Na has legit winning upside. 2 wins in his last 18 starts, including this event last year. That is legitimate upside that there are guys in this range would love to sniff and they can't sniff it. So I'm with you, Pat. I will not be on a lot of the Daniel Bergers as much as I like him. Harris English, great play, but not for me.
Yeah, Ben, when I look at it, like Damon at 75 is the only one who really piques my interest from 75 all the way up to 8,000, and I might not even play him.
I'm just, it's really rare. Normally what we talk about is, obviously when a guy wins a tournament, he's going to get a huge ownership. Kisner and Na have won this tournament, and they're not the guys we're talking about. When I think of this tournament, I think of Kevin Kisner. I vividly remember him winning this tournament. His skill set, this is perfect. You got the bent grass. You have certainly not a course that demands length off the tee. He can win strong fields. He won a WGC. I feel pretty good with him at 76. And if Berger and English are going to soak up ownership, that is just incentivizing me to take the guy that I know likes this track, considering he won here.
I get that he likes it here. I just don't like where his game was going into the break. Maybe he has that all figured out. I don't know. But I think the big thing is with the English is even like Max Hama is in this range. He's going to garner some pub because he's like a celebrity on Twitter and people listen to his podcast. Good show, by the way. I like him and Shane Bacon, but I don't know if I necessarily want to populate him in my DraftKings lineups, especially because of that when I look at the bottom half of the $7,000 range, like I don't see why these guys, you have to make people a price, but there's a bunch of guys at like 7,200 who are no different than Kevin Kisner. Like, isn't Adam Hadwin just basically Kevin Kisner?
I think the sevens are notoriously interchangeable like this. You're going to look and you're going to see a lot of guys that you can mix and match. I think Benyon is going to be very popular, but there's a million plays around him. I'll throw out Ian Poulter, who was playing well before the break. I think he sets up well again, and I don't think people like to play him. So it's hard because, we're all kind of doing this, and it's hard not to. Guys who are playing bad, it's like, oh, do I want to trust them? Guys that were playing good, if you like them, you say, well, they were playing great. It's hard to know what recent form even is, if it's anything at this point. So that's a work in progress, evaluating all these guys.
Rick, in this range for me, I really, really like Billy Horschel at $7,400. I'm talking myself into Joaquin Niemann at $7,400. I like Hadwin at 73, and then we go down, and I really like EVR and Corey Connors at 7,100. I think that's where I'm more likely to go. Full fade on Ben Ann. I can't have him breaking my heart the first week back of golf in 3 months. I just can't do it.
That would be a welcome sight. Welcome back to golf. Benyon loses 3 strokes putting every single day would be like exactly what I would expect. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think to Ben's point, a lot of these guys are interchangeable. There's guys that have built-in narratives. Ryan Palmer, the member at Colonial, he's going to probably get a little bit of boost because of that. Joaquin Niemann, already a winner this year. People know the name. I think Abraham Answer is kind of interesting. He's one of the few guys in this price range that gains in all 4 of the strokes gains categories. Played really well on home soil at the WGC Mexico. And this is not necessarily a course that is going to require a ton of distance off the tee, hence your Kevin Kisner winners. So he's someone that interests me, but I think the larger point here is Ben's point, which is, yeah, if there's someone you can find a reason to like and get into your lineup, it's going to be really hard for me to convince you otherwise because of the interchangeability.
Yeah, I'm good with fading Ryan Palmer if he's going to end up being popular, because I think that him and On will be sort of like the English and who was the other guy that everyone's going to use? English and Burger of like the lower $7,000 range. So Answer too. I do think that Answer will be somewhat popular, but I can get on board with the logic behind him. I think that was well said, Rick. But you have other guys here, Ben, that like in my mind fit the course really well. Like, why doesn't Cam Smith fit this course really well?
Well, Cam Smith doesn't fit golf in general well at this point, but that's neither here nor there. I don't know what to make of him. I mean, you say, oh, well, he won in 2020. Look at those stats. He gained 8.5 strokes putting and another handful around the green. I don't know what to make of him. I will say he's shown up in strong fields over the years. That's not going to be a problem, but God, it's tough. There's a lot. I mean, you have the South African Bezenhout right there who was playing really well. We don't know really how good he is. And then Bubba's in this range who kind of just sticks out, but I don't even know why. I think maybe in aggressive bomber stacks that are counterintuitive, I may use him, but overall, I'm going to keep it pretty simple and go with things I feel more comfortable with.
Yeah, you have Knox and Ryan Moore, who in like just the actual skill sets that we've been talking about, the Kisner type player, even like the Hadwin type player, they hit fairways. They don't really putt all that well, but sometimes they do, that maybe that they can come through. The weird guy in here, and this is like the most pure run hot GPP play of all time, Rick. Danny Lee at $7,200 over the past 5 years actually has the 4th most strokes gained at this course.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I feel like we're going to get like a Danny Lee 62 in one of these rounds. I don't know when it's going to be or what he's going to do in the other 3, but it's going to be something wild. I personally do not like the bottom of this $7,000 range. I think it's filled with kind of has-beens, which is like Phil and Bubba Watson, guys that really never were. I might just default to, hashtag team no putt. Keegan Bradley, Corey Connors. I can't get myself to Emiliano Grillo, but like those guys that at least can get you to the green, and then hopefully you catch a hot putter for a couple of days. It's really a dead zone for me.
Well, Ben, he kind of hit on a key name. I know you're going to use Grillo for reasons, and I assume you're going to use Jason Duffner as well. Like you use these guys in regular weeks, and this is like a spot for them.
Yeah, I mean, Duffner was someone that I was pounding before, and I thought he was really building to something. Grillo, I don't know what to make. So he gained somehow, I don't remember this, but he gained 10.5 strokes putting here a couple years ago. And for him, I mean, he hasn't gained. He'll never gain 10 strokes putting cumulative because he never gains strokes putting. So maybe he does like this bent grass for some reason. The problem with him is the rest of his game is also very bad right now. His around the green game is broken, but it's worth a shot, and it's mostly because of what Rick said. I don't like the bottom of this range. I think these are dart throws at best. Maybe EVR I feel a little more comfortable with, but other than that, I don't think any of these guys you can feel too comfortable with. So if I'm going to do that, like I'll use Griot in some of those spots.
Yeah. Can I give you a Griot stat here?
Always.
So yeah, his best ever event, the 10.7 he gained in 2018 at the Charles Schwab. This event is like 3 of his 12 best putting events ever. So maybe he's got good vibes there. It is kind of crazy.
Oh man, I don't know how comfortable I would feel putting Griot into a line. Maybe that's the point of this, because like we talked about Knox, we talked about Moore, who are kind of in a similar ilk, although those guys hit fairways really good with wedges. But then you also have like Shez Reavie and Jim Furyk, who are also exactly the same type of player here.
There was an event in Sea Island over the weekend that had some PGA guys, some Korn Ferry guys. It was like, Adam Schenk, Jim Furyk, Harris English was there. There was some Korn Ferry guys. Furyk played pretty well. I think he finished like 8th or 9th game. We don't have any eyes on it. I saw the scorecards, but game seems to be not terrible.
Well, there was another guy who was there, and he's only $7,000. And this hits on what I talked about is, do you have an option where someone can kind of go nuclear, especially on the greens? I think JT Poston's that guy. I believe he was 4th. He won the team competition with the guy who ended up winning at that back to golf challenge that you were talking about at Sea Island. Yeah. But when you go back and look at the courses where he's had the most success, like he won the Wyndham Championship last year. He's played well at Honda. He's played well at Sony. He's played well at Heritage. These shorter courses are what he does well. He hits a bunch of fairways, and he plays short par 4s really well. Over the past 50 rounds coming into this event, he's actually second in this field on holes from 350 to 400 yards. We're going to see 4 of those this week. So if you can just get him to be like okay off the tee, okay on approaches, okay around the greens, and then you go look at what he's done on the greens, like he's gained in 6 of his past 7 events, but in 4 of those over that time, he gained at least 3.5 strokes putting. Like, that's pretty good. Like, that's the type of long shot guy that I want. Like, he's going to be the guy that, someone texts you over the weekend being like, oh, there's Rory, there's Dustin. It's like, who the fuck is JT Poston? Like, who's this guy? And then they'll have to ask Ben, and he'll be like, well, he putts a lot.
His results have been like oddly consistent. He's finished between like 11th and 40th in like 8 of his last 11 events. Like he's I don't know how much upside he's got. He's got a little bit, but he doesn't always kill you. I mean, it's kind of weird. This is an interesting box score to run through.
Ben, did I talk you into Poston?
Oh yeah, I'm a big JT Poston guy. You said it. He can hit a lot of fairways. He can get hot with the putter, and this is kind of a putting competition when it comes down to it. And this range is pretty weak. I think people are, Charlie Hoffman and guys like that. I'm not really sold. Norin is there. That's a dangerous game every time. So easy sell for me, and I don't think he'll be popular.
So let's try the $6,000 range. There's not a slew of great names down here, but I got 2. I think one's a safe guy and one is an absolute dart throw that, for whatever reason, I'm just kind of behind this week. So, Ben, you tell me about these 2 guys. One, the Todd father. He's won in Texas before. We know that he's won twice this season. And like Poston, if someone's just going to go bananas on the greens, it's him. And he hits more fairways than anyone else on tour. So he has that for him too. He's pretty solid. He missed the first 4 cuts of this season, and he's made every one since. So maybe he's not like the upside guy who won back-to-back weeks in the swing season, but someone who could potentially top 20 here. And people think of him as a Bermuda putter only, but he's just as good on bent grass as he is on Bermuda. So I like Todd at $6,800. But the other real wild card here, I think, is Matt Wallace, because he could win this tournament because he's Matt Wallace.
So Matt Wallace is really dangerous. When you look at guys, this is where I think lineup construction is so important. If you're in the 6K range and you say, I got 5 guys, I think they're all really live to do serious damage, win the tournament. I just need a 6th guy to find the weekend. I don't think Matt Wallace is the play. But if you're saying, I have a lot of Kuchers up top, I feel pretty good that these guys are going to make the cut, but I want some more upside, Matt Wallace, in terms of, top 5 equity, win equity for these type of players, I think is towards the top. Now, my guy is Bud Cauley. I really like the spot for him. Playing kind of like JT Poston, very consistent, hasn't popped. Got cut here last year, but he lost 5 strokes putting, gained 4 tee to green. I think his game, really good scrambler, can get hot with the putter, is a secret little $6,800 play that I may use to leverage the back end of my lineups.
Looking at Bud Cauley's stats here right now, and people can just go click on these players on fantasynational.com if they want their course history and recent form. Guy is killing it on approach. It's kind of shocking. This is not the Bud Cauley I remember. 3.9, 2.5, 3, 2.2. Very good around the greens. I mean, he's not the best off the tee, but maybe he can hit it. He's a lot like Webb. He's bad off the tee, but it's due to the lack of distance. It's not because he's putting it in the woods every time. So interesting. What do you make of that, Rick?
It is interesting because even in the one round at the Players Championship, he gained nearly a shot and a half on approach as well. So, I mean, he really is hitting his irons well. I knew as soon as Ben said my guy, I knew he was going to say Bud Cauley. That was the absolute lock. I personally really do not like this area as well. I unfortunately, if I want to try to get one or two of the top guys, I'm going to have to go down here. The one that stood out to me for purely, listen, we're coming back from a 3-month break from a pandemic. I can pick a guy and have really no reasons behind it, and now's the time. Jazz Janewattanand is $6,500. That was a correct pronunciation of that. And he is the 39th ranked player in the world, which you can argue they can game the system for the official world golf rankings. But if you look at the other guys that are in this range, they're ranked anywhere from 150 to Chris Kirk is 511th in the world right now. And Jazz was over here during the break playing mini tour golf. I don't think it's drastic to say he's played more competitive golf in the last 3 months than a lot of guys in this field, because he was on the Outlaw Tour and the whatever tour and everything else over here. So $6,500 to just make the cut. How about Jazz?
I mean, why try to get a guy who can make the cut when at basically the same price you can take him who could win this tournament or come dead last?
There it is. There it is. When's the last time Siwoo won?
Yeah, I know. Siwoo his used to be all or nothing. Now he's just middling at best. He doesn't even have the craziness anymore.
Yeah, but go look at the places where Siwoo has played well over the years. He lost in a playoff at Heritage. I would say that's probably a comp course. He won at Wyndham. I would say that's a comp course. He won at TPC Sawgrass. I'd say that's another shorter course where it seems like his eye fits these type of courses better than any other types of courses, at least in my mind.
I thought you were going to bring up Jimmy Walker. I'm not going to lie.
No, Tway at 67 is just someone who's played well at this course for whatever reason. He had a bad API, but he had been a lot like Bud Cauley, just kind of crushing it on approaches over the past little bit.
I don't mind that. There's a lot of guys here.
I don't remember this at all. Siwoo was tied for second at the Players Championship after that first round.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that is absolutely wild. I don't remember that at all.
If I'm playing 20 lineups, could I use 2 with Matt Wallace and 2 with Siwoo and just be on my way?
I mean, you'll be down to 16 lineups, but that's fine. Yeah. Again, I think it's really about how you're trying to leverage. If you do that, you need to know, all right, this is pure, I'm trying to get paid off here and I'm going to be a little more conservative up top. I think it'd be a huge mistake to use them with Shane Lowry in a lineup. That wouldn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, they would be perfect to pair if I wanted to go Webb, even Justin Thomas, Sung J M, or Webb Sung J M right off the top, or and then add Finau into that mix, or Woodland, one of the other popular players that I make my pivot down at the very bottom. A lot of risk in those lineups, though, as you mentioned. At the very top, there are guys like Rafa Cabrera Bello, good player, hits a lot of fairways, really good with wedges, played really well at St. Jude one year, which is another similar style course on bent grass where you want to do a lot of this. Victor Perez, what are we doing with Victor Perez, Ben? Isn't he supposed to be good?
That's what they tell me, but I have trouble with guys like that. I tend to be too late, and then I'm priced out if they get paid off. It's so hard. I mean, this is a guy that I've seen in Europe, and I've seen him a little in WGCs, but I can't really tell you what type of fit he's going to be over here because we just haven't seen it really in these type of events. And we've seen guys, Lucas Biergaard comes to mind. They come over and they get into these traditional, top 65 and ties type plays and they really struggle. So I think I'd rather take RCB or CT Pan or certainly Bud Call, a lot of other flyers before I go to Victor Perez.
Well, Rick, what about your guy? You're always on him, Lonto.
Okay, yeah, I just figured that we pull my string. I can repeat like the Lonto line about when he's under $7,000, right? Death taxes and Lonto under 7,000. Yeah, I mean he's we saw a little bit of the upside. He went out and won Houston, which feels like a million years ago at this point. But yeah, he's fine at 6,900. What about we always talk about this guy Andrew Landry, 6,400. He won a golf tournament like 5 starts ago. Like it's kind of crazy. He's another one of these guys that will be he will like have the best round of the day like once or twice, and then we'll follow that up with 2 77s or something like that.
Every time that I roster Andrew Landry, he is absolute dog shit. And it's always the worst, like, oh, he's 2 shots within in the cut line with 4 holes to go. And then all of a sudden it's like double, he's done. I remember watching him following him around at the 3M Open last year, being like, all right, Andrew, just don't hit it in this bunker. It's like, oh, he's buried in the bunker. Thanks. And it's weird because he's won in Texas before. He hits like every fairway. You think this would be a good course for him, but I just don't think I can pull the trigger. I think I'd rather have, it's because a very personal bias, I'd probably rather take Siwoo Kim.
Yeah, that's the Andrew Landry experience. That's what I pay the price of admission for, is to watch him explode and implode for 2 rounds every week.
Ben, I kind of want to play Zhengzhou Zhang too, but probably not the time. Probably not the time.
Probably not. That's like me with Cam Davis. I'm like, oh man, he finally figured it out. I got to go right back to him. I don't think this is the time. Again, you also have to think about, I know it's appealing to play everyone, but you also have to think, what are the chances if I don't play this guy that I get burned in any significant way? Like, yes, they might make the cut and they might have been a play that wouldn't hurt you and even maybe help you. But is your week going to be over because you don't play, say, Cam Davis? That'd be pretty shocking to me. So you can be pretty selective down here and be all right.
In terms of early ownership, no one really sticks out in the $6,000 range. I think that everyone's having a lot of the same issues that we're having. Like, do you really want to play any of these guys? Vaughn Taylor is a name that's like showing up with a bit of ownership. Charles Howell III just will have ownership because he always does when he's this lowly priced, but I can't think of anyone else. Andrew Putnam is a guy that people really like. It does seem.
This is the range that we usually just try to find like a guy who's been on like a good 2-week run and he's got like 2 top 12s and we're like, oh, maybe he can keep it going this week. Well, we don't really have that. So it's even more of a dart throw than usual.
Okay. So that's everyone we got going on for the DraftKings pricing. I want to talk DraftKings Showdown for a second, Benjamin. I wasn't normally going to play it. I'm very selective where I play DraftKings Showdown. It's usually at multi-course venues when people don't realize that there's an easy course and a hard course and don't just stack the easy course because for whatever reason, that doesn't occur to people. Here, I've talked about it. I've wrote about it. I don't think I need to go on ad nauseum about it, but there is a bit of a runway for players playing on the back to start. Everyone starting on the 10th tee, I think, has a better chance at a birdie streak at the turn going 17, 18, 1, 2 than they would starting out on 1. Like, do you think that's enough for me to go and like use that strategy and play Showdown?
I think, it's definitely something that you can glean a little edge from. We'll see with the weather. Obviously, that's a very traditional Showdown thing. You're, usually going to take some guys in the AM over the PM if everything is equal. I'm with you, Pat. I normally play Showdown heavily when we have a 3-course rotation and people don't understand the difference. But with a week like this, we can see who maybe gets off to. I'll be more apt to probably play on Friday when I see a little bit. I just don't even know what to expect from anyone on Thursday. Nothing would surprise me.
Yeah, and one of the big keys to Showdown that you can use is basically just look who was riding a hot putter round 1, fade them, or see a guy who was definitely ball striking the hell out of everything and couldn't make 3-foot putts. I mean, if you just use Fantasy National /Mayo to get that discount, the live leaderboard will be available to you in real time once you go onto the site on Thursday and Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So if you want to play along, try to build some Showdown lineups, you can use the lineup generator for that too once you select your players. Or if you just want to live bet or play head-to-heads or whatever it might be, that's an essential tool that you need to use. Rick, what do you make of this Millionaire Maker, and it's in the 555 as well, of the low round of the day bonus?
It's very interesting. First of all, I applaud DraftKings for the innovation. I think the innovation is great. I think in general, what is likely to happen in the Millie is you're going to get a very small payout, potentially less than $1, if one of your guys in your lineup is the low round of the day. Now, it's much more appealing if you're playing the 555 and there's only 2,000 people in it, but I don't know how many people are doing that. But yeah, I wouldn't be trying to game the system, I'll tell you that, Pat, especially not in the Millie Maker, where you have to get a 1% guy to solo be the leader for the round, and that would get you $28 per lineup. If you do that in the 555, it's $1,250 per lineup. So a lot to ask for someone with a low ownership to be the low leader on a single day, and then if you split it, it's even worse. So I wouldn't try to game the system, but cool innovation.
Ben, in the 555, and even in the Millionaire Maker, just the split's going to be so large, it's not going to make a difference in the Millionaire Maker. It could literally be pennies if Webb Simpson has the low round of the day. But going back to that sort of contrarian lean, trying to find a pivot play, like in the 8K range guy, like if I have Shane Lowry on my 555 team and he's 2% owned, like all of a sudden I didn't try to game the system to get the low round of the day guy, but the way that I constructed my lineups just led to that. I think that's just more of a best case scenario of what happens. I wouldn't even pay attention to it.
Absolutely. Just think about it logically. If you think a guy might be the first round leader, you probably should be using him, regardless if there was a bonus or not. Like if anyone is hitting that for you, it should have been someone in your player pool anyway. So it's just an added bonus of, wow, I got this guy really possibly under-owned, and maybe you get paid off immediately from it. But there is nobody in my player pool that I am using that I wouldn't have used if this wasn't a thing.
If it was the Masters and they had this, would you use Charlie Hoffman automatically?
Yeah, he would be 100% owned, and it would be hard to argue with that.
All right, guys, anything else to add before we get out of here?
Golf is back.
It's exciting.
Yeah, don't overreact. I'll tell you, whatever tournament is next week,
Yeah.
don't overreact to that recent form. I'm going to be saying that a lot because people are going to take whatever happens here and say, oh, well, DJ, he's the best player in the world again if he plays well. So don't overreact to one tournament.
All right, Rick, tell everyone what they can expect to check out once again at rickrungood.com.
Yeah, updated a lot of tools. The database continues to grow into European Tour and PGA Tour data back to 1980. And then we are doing a ton of stuff on CBS Sports, whether it's the First Cut podcast, which I host with a couple other guys, or going on the CBS Sports Network. There's like wall-to-wall PGA coverage for the foreseeable future. So it should be a lot of fun.
Ben, once again, when are the live shows at Osimo going every single day?
So we got a show Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 on Tuesdays with me and Fantasy Golf Man, and then a live before lock Wednesday nights. So we have that, obviously the articles, Alex Baker's projections behind the paywall, and all the tools associated with the site. So hope to see you guys sign up. It's a great time. Get in Slack and have some fun.
All right, I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me on Twitter at the PME, which I suggest you do because I might have some Millionaire Maker tickets to give away. Smash the like button on your way out and leave an audio review after you subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience podcast. Cheat sheet up on Tuesday afternoon. Live show, 12:30 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday, where I'll be giving out all my final picks, updating the weather, the ownership, and taking your viewer questions. Go check out the other shows, too, up on the Pat Mayo Experience feed. I always wanted to play DraftKings because, golf was happening. We got the UFC show. More football coming out for you on the Pat Mayo Experience. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!